Welcome everyone. My name is Mark Blanchard. I'm the Public Sector Director for GovNews, and we're here today to be looking at and talking about securing government services, identifying threats, mitigating risk, and building resiliency. I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Watson, the Public Sector Lead at Tenable. Tom, great to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me along, Mark. Excited to chat.
Wonderful. So let's get started. First of all, tell us a little bit more about who you are and how Tenable support the public sector with its cyber requirements.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. So, as the public sector lead at Tenable, what that really means is I'm responsible for Tenable's considerable presence, sort of across local gov and the NHS. And Tenable's whole sort of raison d'etre, I guess you could call it, is all around helping those organisations understand their exposure. So understanding where risk lies across the attack surface so that organisations can effectively manage that risk and secure themselves. Historically, Tenable has focused on sort of software vulnerabilities, but over the last few years, we've really expanded that capability across multiple asset types. So moving from sort of your traditional network assets to public cloud, to your identities, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud as well, web apps, APIs. The way I like to kind of position it is, especially when it comes to the public sector, we have organizations, let's take local authorities, for example, who hold critical sensitive information about some of the most vulnerable people in society and provide essential services that most of us rely on. So it's pretty important that those services aren't disrupted and that data isn't compromised. However, there's been so many changes at sort of strategic or organizational level over the last 20 years or so. You look at, I've got authorities that used to be independent, then they went to county councils, now they're part of unitary councils. Yeah. And all of that comes with an awful lot of change in their IT estate. Who owns what, who's responsible for securing what. And also people move on. So people who used to know something like the back of their hand are no longer with the organization or have moved into another role. So having a company like Tenable that's able to help organizations with the visibility into what they have, what vulnerabilities they have, what misconfigurations they have, ultimately where they are at risk with what they have in their environment, and kind of provide that level of expertise around how to manage that, how to go through remediation, and how to contextualize that risk, because risk is different to each organization, right? That's incredibly powerful. And in a nutshell, that's what Tenable does.
Right. Okay. So these talks have been very much focused on, I suppose, the key components of the cyber assessment framework. So looking at, managing those security risks, protecting against cyber attacks, detecting cybersecurity events, and minimizing the impact of incidents. In what areas of the cyber assessment framework does Tenable help to increase resiliency for its government customers?
Yeah, great question. And I think that it really comes down to that increased resiliency. That's very much our focus. We're all about being proactive. So, objective A in the CAF is all about managing security risk. And, they really sort of hammer home having appropriate structures and policies and procedures in place so that you can understand and manage that risk. But it's really, really difficult to be able to manage that risk unless you have a clear understanding of what you have and the ability to communicate risk across multiple levels of the organization, right? So down to the technical people on the ground who actually manage and carry out the work to try and secure your environment, to the board level who want to get a high level of understanding of, do I need to be worried? Where are we insecure? Where do we need more resource? What do we need to focus on? And Tenable allows organizations to do exactly that. So we provide context to risk within people's environments, i.e. the vulnerabilities that they have sitting there that can be exploited as that initial point of compromise within an attack. So that's kind of number one. We can really help with that management of risk. And then, even in objective B, which is all about protecting against cyber attacks in the CAF, if you look at the breakdown of those objectives, it's really Tenable's bread and butter. Tenable identity exposure, which is one of our products, can help with identity and access controls because it allows you to have visibility into your Active Directory, everything from security groups and GPOs to weak password policies, and what risks do the configurations that you have set up pose the organization. And then, of course, the majority of security practitioners out there will know who Tenable are through Nessus and Tenable as the vulnerability management company. And our vulnerability management suite can help protect critical networks and information systems by ensuring that you're patching your vulnerabilities on those systems. So when you're bringing this data together, we can help you aggregate it, analyze it, and ultimately help organizations understand where they're exposed and what areas they need to harden to be able to proactively protect against cyber attacks. So we're really an important part of that resilience conversation.
Yeah. So for those government organisations that are watching this or listening to this podcast and us talk right now, what key cyber challenges do you foresee for government, whether at central or local level, over the coming years? What's going to be a significant challenge or things that they need to be starting to think about now and be prepared for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that there's a key one that's coming to a head at the moment, and I don't think it's a secret. I think it's a problem now, but it's going to be a real problem in the future, and that's the problem around the lack of expertise and resource within the cyberspace in public sector.
Digital skills,
the
skills,
gap. The skills gap, because it's not just about making sure you've got the right people in the positions today, but cybersecurity is constantly evolving. New threats are coming up all the time. So you need to be continuously aware of those developments. And you need to train your people to keep up with these new technologies. And that requires money, that requires resource, and I'll share an anecdote from one of my customers, who were telling me about this specific problem where they were actually able to upskill and train some of their employees to manage some of these new products and new technologies that are coming out. But then they're being poached by
walking out the door.
Service. They're literally by the service provider already inside the organization, because that service provider can offer them more money and further training opportunities. So as you can imagine, it's incredibly frustrating for a lot of public sector organizations because they know that they need people to do the job. They know that they need to train them and keep them. So the question is, how do you not only retain your best people, but ensure you can continually backfill this pipeline that you need of qualified professionals in the space? And it's something that, I was at an event earlier in the year, CyberGov in Belfast, and I think 2 or 3 of the main keynotes were all about trying to address this. So I can see it coming to a head pretty soon.
That in itself is a risk, isn't it? It's how you mitigate against that risk of, well, we can plough the resources in now, we can upskill, we can create that knowledge, that expertise in-house. But obviously, when it comes to them losing that to the private sector, is there an answer?
I mean, if there is, I don't think it's as simple as, there's a silver bullet. I think that there needs to be more money put into this. I think that from speaking with customers, I think that the hiring processes in public sector organizations are quite stringent. And when you're trying to hire people who are specialists, they're experts at what they do, it's quite difficult to put them in certain bands and to make sure that they're being paid the market rate, that they would get in the private sector. So that's a big part of it because, in a cost of living crisis here, people need to be paid their worth. But also, I don't think it's just to be looked at internally in the public sector. I think that there is the opportunity to work with partners in the private sector space to help bridge that gap, and provide that level of expertise, whether that be through a tooling and software, or it be through services like a managed service or something.
Managed services, yeah. So, what does the benefit? What are the benefits? What does the Tenable and Bytes cyber partnership offer UK public sector in terms of risk and minimising cyber risks and increasing resiliency? What does that partnership look like? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I think it carries on very nicely from the last question, right? And the last point that we're talking about, the skills gap, because one clear way to try and bridge that, as I say, is work with the private sector. Find a partner that you can trust and rely on, like a Bytes. Organizations like Bytes can offer that expertise to help organizations understand if there are tools in the market that can make their job easier, or provide them with that potential capacity support that they don't necessarily have. And Tenable has that as well. We've expanded our capabilities to support organizations with more problems than we used to. We were very much known as the vulnerability management people, and our product strategy has been led through our customers coming to us going, well, great, you're helping us with these traditional network devices, but could you help us with our identity security? Could you help us with our cloud security? And that's the same for the public sector. I think there's a real sort of need for longer term collaborative partnerships that organizations that are strapped for resource can rely on. So I think that having a partner like Bytes that you can trust and ask, what's going on out there? What do I need to be made aware of? Working with the likes of Tenable, who are experts in the areas that we are, to address risk and try and be proactive in your approach rather than just putting out fires all the time. I think those things are absolutely key in helping public sector organizations overcome the challenges that they're facing today, but also with what's coming down the line, right? Because as we say, technology is moving on. There's going to be new risks coming out. So I think that, we can ease the load on those internal teams and allow them to focus more on strategic issues. And ultimately, that's what, the Bytes and Tenable partnership is aiming to do.
Tom Watson, Public Sector Lead at Tenable. Thanks for talking to me.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.